Who's responsible for my prayer life?
You are.
Who's responsible for yours?
You are.
Each one of us. You are responsible for the quality of your prayer life. I'm responsible for mine. There's a couple of stories in the scriptures that I've enjoyed through the years. I oftentimes think of them because they're about a prayer life on the part of two men in the scripture. One in the Old Testament, one in the New Testament. We'll look at both of them this morning. The first one I call your attention is in Daniel chapter 10. If you'll join with me in reading there, prayers that move angels. In both cases that I cite this morning, there is a response from God as an angel messenger comes to speak to the one who has been in prayer. Daniel's book is about a man who probably was the most nearly perfect man among all those that are listed in the scriptures. You would not list David, King David, as one of the perfect men of the Bible. Even Moses would not fall into that category. Daniel is thought of as probably being one of the most righteous men that lived, that is recorded anything about in the Bible. He was a man who was very devoted to God, a prayer warrior for his people. And he prayed for his people. They were in a land of captivity, not like us. There was no First and Second Amendment for them to protect their interest as there is for us in America. But he prayed for his people. And this is recorded in chapter 10. In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, we know just about the year that this happened. It's about 536 BC. Pretty good dating on the kings of Persia and the time of Nebuchadnezzar before them. So in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belshazzar. And the thing was true, but the time appointed was long. And he understood the thing that had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. He's really in a lamentation. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth. Neither did I anoint myself at all, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. In the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hiddekel, which is the Tigris River as we know it today. Then I lifted up mine eyes, and I looked, and behold, a certain man, clothed in linen, whose loins were girded about with fine gold of Uphaz, whose body was like the beryl, his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like color-polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. What a magnificent experience. I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men that were with me saw not the vision, but a great quaking fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone. I saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned into corruption, and I retained no strength. He collapsed before this experience. Yet heard I the voice of his words, and when I heard the voice of his words, then I was in a deep sleep on my face, and my face toward the ground. And behold, a hand touched me. And Daniel continues, which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto you, and stand upright. For unto you am I now sent. And when he had spoken this word unto me, I stood, trembling. And then said he unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you did set your heart to understand and to chasten yourself before thy God, your words were heard, and I am come because of your words. For the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now I am come to make you understand what shall befall your people in the latter days, for yet the vision is for many days. What is God telling us in a story like this? The account is given to us. I think of this way: how big is your God? How much of God do you really want in your life? If you're going down to the hardware hardware store buying a sack of nails, will a pound and a half be enough to do the job? Do you need about a pound and a half of God? That's enough to do what you want God to do in your life? How big is your God? And likewise, are you fully engaged in the faith that you have in God? Or is it a kind of casual thing that, Sunday's coming, I better put on my Sunday clothes because I'm going to be Sunday righteous for a few hours. And so my God is with me this day. How much engaged are we in our God? Is God our default helper? I notice that I don't understand computer stuff very much, but so often there'll be something to come up, a message, do you want so-and-so to be the default? And I don't know whether to say yes or no. Sometimes I say yes, and then a whole bunch of stuff comes up on the screen. Oh my gosh, what have I done? How do I get out of this? How do I get it to reverse? And yet, defaults have their place in life. It's a reality of what we experience. Is God when you can't do it, your default helper? No need of bothering, don't pray, don't just carry on with it. But once in a while when you're really getting a fix, turn to God. Turn to God. Or is there a constancy of seeking God's help and guidance? Is your prayer life shallow? Only I can answer for me, and only you can answer for you. How much is there life in your prayer life? Is your prayer life shallow? How involved is your friendship with God? Or is he kind of like somebody you see across the room and you might recognize him if you see him out in public somewhere, but you really don't know him that well? Yesterday at the memorial service, afterwards, before and afterwards, we were meeting a lot of people who we hadn't seen in years in the large family that Daddy had, the extended family, those who had married into the family. And we saw what were once some kids that used to come to programs in our church years ago who are now in their 30s and early 40s, and they've got children that are teenagers. And at first when they come walking up to you, they're all filled out and wearing suits and what have you, you think, that person looks a little familiar, but until they tell you who they are and you begin to look into their eyes and hear their voice, and you're, oh, that's that kid that used to be in our youth program. Now they've got kids of their own and they're involved in church somewhere. One of the young men, I was talking to a young one yesterday, and I thought, another one heard the conversation, who I think he told me he was 39, and he'd been in church here for a long time too, gotten married, has children. And I was asking this young lad, I said, what are you doing in your life? I said, what's your work? He was telling me about it. And I said, can you make a living doing that? And he kind of laughed. I said, well, I'm getting along. I have to work 2 jobs, but I said, well, do you enjoy doing it? Yeah, I like doing it. And the video part that he was in, especially like that. I said, can you make a living doing that? Well, there was another man standing there, and I hadn't paid much attention to him. But when I finished talking to this teenager, and turned to this other one and said, I said teenager, he was probably about 20, I would guess. And he came up and he says, you know, you used to say that to us. I remember years ago when I was young, and here at this church, you used to say that, can you make a living doing that? And I said, you know, I still feel that way. If you can do something you enjoy, that's a wonderful vocation in life. If you can make a living doing what you enjoy, that's great. That's icing on the cake. Do you need God? Is your friendship rich and satisfying? Do you need angels to help you? Do they help you? Do they help us? Are you self-sufficient? You really don't need much from God. Intellectually, you accept that he's there. Intellectually, you read the Bible, but do you really need much from God? Do you see God's touch anywhere in your life? Do you see God's touch? May God open our eyes that we see these things. 1 Samuel 16:7 is a wonderful experience where Samuel the prophet was out looking for a king to anoint. He had been sent over to Bethlehem to the household of Jesse. And Jesse had some sons, and God had told him, go over there, you're going to anoint the next king of Israel. There's already a king in Israel. You remember the name of the king that was already in place? Saul. Saul was king. He didn't really want to hear any more than Herod wanted to hear that there was a king born in Israel. He didn't want to hear that there's going to be another king anointed. But Samuel is sent over there to the house of Jesse, and the various sons are brought before the priest. And Samuel's, Lord, is it this one? Is it this one? The Lord says, no. God says, no, no. And he has to ask the question, well, is this it? You brought all your boys in? Oh, well, there's one kid out there taking care of the sheep. Bring him in. Bring him in. And then God says to Samuel, anoint him. Anoint him. And that kid, what was his name? David. Anoint him. And at that time, there's this words are recorded in Samuel. It says this, but the Lord said to Samuel, who's looking at these sons, somebody's going to get anointed. Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. You're looking at all of them? That's not what God has chosen. I've rejected him. The Lord does not look at things the way people look. People look at the outward appearance. This is the New International Version of it. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. The Lord looks at the heart. The man Daniel. The scripture tells us, as we read here in chapter 10, twice in the verses that are here, that he's a man who's greatly loved of God. Notice what it says here in verse 11. He said unto me, this angelic appearance that comes to him, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved. Greatly beloved. And again, another one comes in verse 19 and says, O man greatly beloved, fear not, peace be unto you, be strong, yes, be strong. Beloved of God, Daniel, beloved of God. He was serving at a time as captive, probably had a great degree of freedom, but serving in the kingdom of Persia. One of the interesting things, when I listened this morning, I was thinking about what Rick was saying about this ISIS training camp that they revealed this week. It's about 8 miles south of the Mexican border. They're training people getting ready to come into our country and unleash on us the hell that they're turning loose on the world. And I thought about what the scriptures say about Persia. Persia is oftentimes at the top of the list of those nations that will come against Israel when you read Ezekiel and Revelation. Ezekiel, Daniel, and Revelation. Persia is often listed at the top of the list. At this time, they are the custodial care of Israel. Israel was taken into captivity under the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. And then the Babylonians were overrun by the Persians and the Medes. And now we have, at this time, when Daniel was telling the story, Persian kings that control the life of the Israeli people. The captivity period is about to come to an end. 70 years of captivity, the Babylonian captivity, are about to come to an end. And God is revealing to Daniel the things that are soon going to begin to come to pass. But it was in the reign of Cyrus, in the 3rd year, as he cites it there, that Cyrus was king when these things, this particular experience takes place. Daniel is probably in his 70s. Some think he may have well even been into his 80s by this time. You're not much good for anything when you're in your 70s, are you? That's time to retire, draw your Social Security. Daniel could have been drawing his, maybe. Though it was the kind of experience that anybody could identify with, except it was special for Daniel. God has heard his prayers. God has heard his prayers. And that's the point of what verse 12 is saying. Then he said unto me, fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you did set your heart to understand and chasten yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I am come because of your words. Why has he had this appearance of this angelic heavenly being? Because God has been listening to his prayers, and it's time for something to happen. Daniel's prayer life. I had to be a little bit preacher-like here, Brother Wayne. Consistency. Consistency in prayer. Daniel was a praying man. The scriptures tells us in chapter 6 how that 3 times a day he prayed. He prayed whenever there were commandments of the kingdom that nobody should pray to any other God. He did it anyway. It was out of that experience that he found himself visiting at the zoo one night. You remember who he spent the night with? The lions. The lions. And nobody would look forward to an experience like that. This is going to be terrible. And the king was concerned about what was happening. And he spent a very restless night, and he comes early in the morning to see what's happening. He calls, oh, Daniel, Daniel, and the Bible tells us with lamentation. The king just knows the worst thing in the world has happened. Daniel, Daniel. And Daniel responds, good morning, king. You can just imagine, I had a wonderful night's sleep. This servant mattress was wonderful. And I had the warmth of these creatures near me. And then he says, God sent an angel, and the angel closed the mouths of the lions. Do you believe in a God like that? I do. The angel closed the mouth of the lions. There he was. Now there's a man who has a life-changing experience. Danny Rivera had a life-changing experience, and some of us knew him from the early days when he became a Christian. And we heard the testimonies yesterday about that. Consistency in prayer. Daniel prayed 3 times a day. Conviction. Whenever they said, don't pray to any other God, he says, I got to pray to God. He prayed to the God of Israel. He's not going to let the dominance of the king of Persia rule what he would do, or the king of Babylon. None of these are going to be able to control the situation. He has a conviction that he's serving God, and he's serving God alone. And he has courage. When you think about what's happening in the world today, we are looking at a modern day 21st century Holocaust that is transpiring. The persecution and destruction of Christianity in the Middle East. Hitler perpetrated it upon Germany and Europe. And now we've got a radical Islamic group who is pulling it off in the Middle East. And they intend to bring it to all the world. God help us. God help us. Daniel's a model believer. Now there's something else for this. How about the angels? If angels can shut the mouths of lions, and an angel comes to Daniel now and says, God's been listening to your prayer. And the reason I'm here is because of what you've been saying. God sent me. The prayers. The angels. The word angel in the Greek is angelos, and it means messenger. Literally means a messenger. And that's what this is. The fellow who comes, the appearance of this one who has this bright, shining appearance, beautiful white linen garment wrapped with a golden belt, tells about coming from God. He's an angelos, an angel of the Lord. He's a messenger for God. And he's communicating God's purpose. God is getting ready to reveal something to Daniel. Daniel's been praying about the circumstance of what's happening there in this captivity under the Persian rulers. What's going to happen? And when you read Daniel's account in the other chapters, you see where he was reading over in the prophet Jeremiah, what Jeremiah said. And as he's reading the prophet Jeremiah, he sees something about 70 years. 70 years are determined. And he's puzzling over that. What does that mean? 70 years. 70 years. There's going to be captivity. Jeremiah and Isaiah are prophets of the captivity of what is to come upon the Jewish people. And now Daniel is one who participates in the captivity. They're down at the end of the captivity now. And he's puzzling over what the prophet has said. 70 years, 70 years. And as he prays about it, God sends a messenger. And that's the unfolding of the report of what's about to happen when you read in Daniel's account of it. God is revealing to him what is going to happen. The communication of God's purpose in the world is why the angels come. Whenever the angel appeared to Mary, you're going to have a child. Angel stands by the altar of Zacharias when he's doing his ministry in the temple, and he's going to have a son. He's an old man, and his wife is old, but he's going to have a son. An angel comes with a messenger. Abraham's sitting down there under the tree at the gate one day, and he looks up, and there's 3 fellows come walking up. 3 of the locals, that's all. Really? No. Coming from God. Coming from God. Doing the purposes of God. Appearing to mankind on missions, angels, protecting God's people, encouraging God's people, the purpose of angels, punishing evil. Whenever the death angel went over Egypt, evil was being punished. And the angels can be involved in death likewise. But the other side of it too is, you remember when Jesus told the story about Lazarus who laid at the rich man's gate and wanted something to eat off of what was on the table? And when he died, did they haul him off to the cemetery? Jesus said the angels came and bore him to Abraham's bosom. Jesus believed in angels. We believe in angels. Why shouldn't we expect that angels would have something to do with our life? And then in heaven, the worship that the angels give to God. I want to quickly touch on something here and bring this around. 7 angels kind of stand out in the scripture. 2 are named in the Old Testament as we have it. There are others who are named. In Revelation chapter 8, verse 2, there is this. John said this, I saw 7 angels who stood before God. And then the unfolding of the episodes, the events that transpire in the book of Revelation. They are named in Jewish literature. Our Bible is kind of Jewish literature, isn't it? Isn't the Old Testament Jewish literature? Isn't the New Testament Jewish literature? Jews wrote it, people of Jewish background. In Jewish literature, we have it. And from other books that they have, and they are named Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Raguel, Raziel, Sariel, and Uriel. These are the common names in Jewish literature that are given to the 7 principal angels in the presence of God. You notice all of these names end with El. El is a Hebrew word for God. El. Gabriel. Michael. End with God. And they all have a meaning attached to God. Michael, who is like God. Who is like God? That seems to be what the name is saying. Gabriel, God is my strength. Gabriel. Raphael, God is healer. Raphael. Sariel, command of God. Raguel, friend of God. Raziel, secrets of God. Paul will say at times, behold, I tell you a mystery. Uriel, God is my light. And one other I want to close with then and bring this around for us to see. Acts 10. If you turn your Bibles over to Acts 10. God responds to Daniel's prayer. And he's been praying faithfully and constantly. But there's another fellow who is quite unlike Daniel. And I just want to spend a moment on this fellow. In Acts chapter 10, there is the episode of a Roman soldier, a man of commanding authority, who is what is called by New Testament scholars a God-fearer. Fearing God, God-fearer. He's not a convert to Judaism. He hasn't accepted Judaism as his faith. He's in the employment of Caesar. He's stationed in Israel. That's where he's deployed. And that's his command. And his name is Cornelius. But he's much impressed by the Jewish religion and those atrocious Jewish people that live in Israel. It's that kind of rabble that managed to get Jesus crucified. But Cornelius, there's something different about that man. He's a Gentile. And the scripture tells us it this way in chapter 10, verse 1 of Acts. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band. Probably his lineage is Italian. A devout man, one that feared God with all his house, who gave many alms to the people. And notice the last phrase, and prayed to God always. This man is a Gentile. He's not a Jew. And he prayed to God always. Verse 3, he saw in a vision evidently about the 9th hour of the day, an angel of God coming into him and saying unto him, Cornelius. And when he looked on him, he was afraid, and he said, What is it, Lord? And he said unto him, Your prayers and your alms are come up for a memorial before God. And then the message is delivered. Cornelius has been praying constantly, fervently, by conviction that this God is worthy of acknowledgement. And when you look at this and you realize here's a man who doesn't identify with the Jewish faith, he doesn't probably know much about the Bible,